He is the great I am. His first friend was Abraham. Surely said to Abraham, I am that I am. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
It's a nice song.
Hallelujah, hallelujah.
Rhett, I just want to say that you wrote that song, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really a nice song.
Thank you.
Great way to start off our time together.
Well, the Lord gave that to me. I don't know, maybe I just happened to be in my room as about late afternoon, and then all of a sudden I hear this voice saying, "Oh, I like that. I like that," coming up with the melody. And I think it was a gift of the Lord, like everything else is.
Sure.
But yeah, He is the great I am. Anyway, the first friend of Abraham was.
Yeah.
I mean, Abraham was his first friend, and anyway, blah blah blah. But
Good song.
yes, thank you. Yeah, melodically. So anyway, words matter. We're going to be talking about words today. Words matter. Him and that stupid bell. He just wants to irritate me. I have no idea.
That bell keeps us on track, Rhett.
I always know that people are stuck at a certain something. We all are. I got a friend, maybe he's stuck at 8. I know I'm stuck. My father was killed in an accident when I was 5, so I'm kind of like, I got a little stuck at 5. I'm trying to figure out where you stuck.
Where am I stuck?
You're probably 7.
7?
Did something happen to you when you were 7?
I got a bow and arrow and started shooting. I remember when I was 7.
Yeah? Nothing traumatic or
Nothing
anything?
traumatic.
But if you were to say, if your inner voice, if you were to say, what age, because I know even though I'm 72, people don't realize when you get older that you're still young. There's still the 19-year-old here, the 24, and probably if you could choose an age you wanted to be, I would say 34 was a pretty good time.
34 was a good time for you?
Yeah.
Yeah, 34. I had just gone. Yeah, I had just made my first trip to Honduras.
Oh, so you were just starting your missionary work then?
Yeah,
that young. Good for you.
I was living comfortably in Maui. I was part of Hope Chapel. I was a photographer. I had a costume photography business, dressing up tourists in Hawaiian attire and taking their pictures right on Front Street in Lahaina. Lahaina was a great place back in the early 80s to live and work because it still had that specialness that caused people to want to come there. A very historical place. Of course, we had a fire a couple of years ago, burned everything down. In fact, the only thing that was left standing on Front Street was the old spring house, which is what our business rented.
Yeah.
It's the oldest building on Maui. It was built in 1826 by the king because in 1824, some whaling ships that had come from Mexico rolled their barrels ashore to fill them full of water at the spring in Lahaina. And one of the barrels had some water in it, and it had some mosquito larvae. And they dumped it out in the spring, and they filled their barrels, and within a year, all of a sudden, these singing flies started being noticed, and these mosquitoes carried bird pox.
Oh.
So all of the native Hawaiian birds started dying.
Oh.
So everything.
Where did this bad water come from?
Came from Mexico. So
How did it end up there?
Well, in the early 1800s, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean was the Hawaiian Islands, and whaling ships, especially whaling ships from New England that were going after that oil that is special in different kinds of whales.
Yeah.
They used Lahaina as their place to restock and rewater, and it was their resting place. And Hawaiian Islands are the most isolated islands in the world. They're 2,600 miles from San Francisco.
I was there. I was in Maui and Hawaii. Mm-hmm. Maui was my favorite. Is that where you lived on that island?
That's where I live.
Why
yes.
is that the favorite? It was my favorite too, and I don't even really know why. Just something about it.
Well, you have lots of open space. You have 2 mountain ranges. We've got one volcano that's over 10,000 feet that you can drive to the top, Haleakala, and then you have on the other side of the island the West Maui Mountains that go up to 7,000 feet. And in between is this area where lots of sugarcane over the years and pineapples have been grown. Now that's all gone.
This used to be the number one provider, Vero Beach, Florida, a provider of pineapples worldwide, and then Dole came here, and then Dole moved to Hawaii.
No, I didn't realize Dole.
This is what I was told. Now, I might be
Okay.
perpetrating a lie here, but this is what has been put in my ear.
Well,
I
Dole
should confirm that.
Dole Company does own the island of Lanai, which is right next to Maui, and that was a huge pineapple plantation till about 12 years ago, I think, and they turned it into exclusive hotel island with a golf course or two. But yeah, at the age 34, I was just a guy had come to our church at Hope Chapel and told us about the war in Nicaragua, and told us about the Sandinistas taking over the government and bringing their Cuban and Russian and Bulgarian friends in, who turned that country into a Marxist state.
Boy.
And an indigenous group called the Miskitos that live up on the Atlantic coast resisted this atheistic Marxist teaching. I mean, I still have somewhere a second grade math book that the Cubans brought, and they were teaching Mosquito kids second grade math by using two pictures, two AK-47s plus 3 hand grenades equals. That's the way they were teaching second grade math kids.
How about, are you the one that tells that story about they came in and they said, Jesus is going to provide your snack today? Tell that story.
Well, yeah, they would come to a church service, and they would get the kids outside, disrupt the church service, and they would say, "Pray to your God to give you candy." And
close your eyes. They would say, "Close your eyes," and they would say, "Open the eyes." And there'd be no candy there. Then they would come back. Now, pray to.
Daniel Ortega was the president. So,
yeah.
The story as it was related to me was, then the soldiers would throw out candy to the kids, and
now open your eyes, and they go, "Oh, you see, Jesus doesn't give you candy, but Ortega or Castro does."
Or right. So anyway, that was a good time.
That was your 34. 34. I was in Israel, shot my music video, "The Empty Tomb." Debuted on the 700 Club. It was a big deal. Still living in the ghetto apartment in Troy, New York, as a struggling songwriter. Met the little love of my life, who 2 years later would break my heart, and the one that got away. And God always uses that heartbreak, though, for positive things. He says, "He who falls upon this rock shall be broken, but he who this rock falls upon shall be crushed into everlasting powder." For me, my take on that is that just like it's kind of like baptism. If you fall back on the rock, which is Jesus, you will be broken in this life. You will have tribulation and you will have suffering. And it is written that Jesus learned obedience by the things which he suffered, and he was a man well acquainted with sorrow. You learn later on in life, these are gifts because we're in the process of becoming, I guess, better souls for the Lord, and
new
then
creations.
But if you abstain and say, "No, I don't accept you as Lord and Savior," and you go through life impervious, maybe everything's hunky dory, and maybe the bad guy gives you lots of money and isolates you from the vicissitudes of life, and then all of a sudden you die. And Jesus said, "If you fall upon the rock, you shall be broken. But if this rock falls upon you, you shall be crushed into everlasting powder." Can you imagine all the heartbreak you've been through in your life? Imagine if that just came in one moment.
Well,
instead of being spread out.
I think the reality is when people who have been clued in and given hints about God's existence and about Jesus as creator of this universe keep rejecting that and keep rejecting it and keep rejecting it, one day,
Their hearts are hardened.
One day we will all stand before the King, and we will be judged if our name is in the Lamb's Book of Life or not, and the Book of Life. And I think there's going to be a lot of anguish and a lot of sorrow, and a lot of our friends will say, "Why didn't you tell me?"
And that is a responsibility.
And so that's, I think, is when that rock is going to crush them. They will be crushed in their own sorrow for not receiving a free gift of spending eternity with the King.
One thing I've learned to do in life now as an older guy is be faithful to tell your friends about Jesus if you possibly can, and also to tell them that I love you. But now I'm going through, I'll meet a friend, even like a guy friend, and I go, "I just want you to know, I'm only going to say this once, and then let's move on with the conversation, but I love you." Because guys are kind of like, we don't tell each other that we love each other, But it's good. It's good to say things now, and also, what's worrisome is when you don't and you have been negligent in telling someone about what you know. And you don't want to proselytize. You want to put like I have a friend of mine. He's a Jewish doctor. He's brilliant and he's a big giver, and he's very successful in this community and actually in a worldwide in certain ways, which I won't go into. And I just go, are you going to leave your friend? What do I do about my friend? I guess he knows, I'm sure, and I guess you pray, because it's for some of us to plant seeds and some to harvest, and
Well, it is a mysterious process, Rhett. Jesus tells the parable of the farmer that goes out and throws his seed, and he doesn't know what's happening. He just throws out his seed, and soon he sees a little sprout coming up, and then the stalk comes up, and then the fruit comes out, and at the right time, he comes in and harvests, okay? And Jesus is, I think, telling us that this is the process, that we all are getting hints that God exists. We're getting hints that he really cares for us. We, through our own ineptitude and the mistakes and the consequences, we discover that our ways don't necessarily work out, but his ways always seem to work out because God created this universe with a fabric. I mean, the book of Proverbs, chapter 8, is another description of the creation, and wisdom says, I was there with him when he formed the earth, when he, and the fabric that he built of this universe and the way things happen. When we go along with that fabric, then good things happen to us. But it's like aerodynamics. I was talking to a couple of my Swiss pilot friends that used to train here yesterday.
Yeah, you're a former fighter pilot, so.
And they came by the cafe because they had a flight. One of them was flying to Tampa, and they just wanted to come over to Vero Beach. So we had a really nice talk. But I was explaining to them about this fabric that God created. I said it's like an aerodynamics. You guys know, you pull the nose of the airplane up, and you run out of power, and you keep the nose of the airplane up. What's going to happen is that wind across the wings is going to slow down. You're going to get some turbulence. Suddenly one wing or the other is going to fall off as you stall off. You're going to roll and end up nose down into the ground. This is the laws of aerodynamics, right? If you don't obey those laws, you crash and people get hurt. And I think God has created our universe with his laws, so to speak, his ways that things work. And of course, we don't understand hardly any of those ways. I have a friend that's a physics professor at the University in Milano, Marco. He's on the island of Utila, where we have one of our Rio Coco cafes. And Marco said to me, he said, we physicists, we only know about 10% of what's really going on in the world as far as just how it's made and what's going on. And he said, half of that we call dark physics. These are areas that we know exist, but we can't even explain them or understand them. So our knowledge of what God is doing, I mean, what holds the planets in motion? When you see the sunrise and the sunset, the tolerances of us being an ice cube or a shish kebab planet being too close to the sun or too far away, and all life either burning up or freezing. I mean, the tolerances are so small.
Have said now that the moon is placed in a perfect position for keeping the waves on the ocean and being so close, but creating whatever the deal is it does. And if it was moved this way or that way, significantly,
just
a wee little bit.
Yeah.
So I mean, the miracle of it, the miracle of so many things is just all of creation shouts out the glory of God.
Yeah,
there's little doubt about it. And I don't know how people can go through life not even looking at a butterfly or a ladybug or just the intricate workings. And then we'll get on with our show. But a shell, you're walking by the ocean, and you see a shell. Now, I'm a sort of my artwork is like a Picasso, Monet. I'm a free flyer. I don't do exact. I'm not traditional. But you look at a shell and you go, geometry, is that what's called? Every little line in that shell is perfectly line, space. I go, I just marvel at that.
Oh yeah. The just notice even the structure of the plants right outside the window
crazy.
here. I mean, here is a leaf structure that is a solar panel that turns sunlight into glucose and sucrose,
Yeah.
sugar.
Yeah.
And
They're solar panels.
I mean, who designed that, right? I mean, how can you not look around at God's creation and not know that somebody is behind this? This all did not happen randomly. And see, Rhett, I agree with you. I think we are given the opportunity to encourage people to observe and pay attention. You know, 1 Peter 13, I think it's chapter 3, verse 15. Always be ready to give a defense of the faith that we have when asked, and do it with reverence and gentleness and kindness.
Gentle. What does Jesus say? I am gentle and I'm lowly and
Right.
take my burden. What's that saying in there?
Yeah, I'm.
the words.
Yes, it's Matthew chapter 11. I am meek and lowly, and
And I was thinking when I heard that recently, and I've heard that for 40 years, but I was thinking I've got this new bent that I'm into right now. You know, you go through processes and you go through a little thing, and that is in Samuel it says, "Thy gentleness hath made thee great." In the Psalms it says, "Thy gentleness hath made thee great," and you know,
and Proverbs says it's kindness that's desired most of all.
and it also says it's your kindness that leads us to repentance.
Yes.
You know, you can be all stuck up in your sin. You know you've made mistakes, blah blah blah, and I don't know. Maybe a sunlight breaks through a ray of sun and goes, "But you're still my son, and I forgive you." You do, and then you just want to go, "Okay, what can I do? I love you too." And you know, well, Jesus said, "He who is forgiven much loves much." You know,
Right.
but. Anyway, he says the hairs, for somebody out there who might be hurting today, I want you to know this. The Father does say, "Not a sparrow falls from the heaven without the Father's permission. For the very hairs on your head are counted. And do you not know that you're of greater value than many sparrows?" And you know, mathematically, I mean, you're a former fighter pilot. And I remember up at JI, it's a wealthy community where we live, and we used to go for this men's Bible study. And there was one guy sat over, and he was a former fighter pilot. He's like in his 90s now, but he was always the quiet one. And I've always learned, look at the quiet one, because the quietest guy generally at the table is probably the deepest one. Would you agree?
Rhett, do you really want me to answer that question with you sitting across
A loquacious individual.
Mr. Loquacious himself? Okay. And me sitting here with my
But you know, it's
bell.
it's okay.
So, just to keep us on track.
I've already learned that I'm far more stupid than I ever thought I was. I'm a lot less than I ever thought I was. I'm incorrigibly ignorant and lowly, but it's good for me because maybe once in a while he lets somebody who's, he's chosen the foolish things of this world to be wise.
Right.
He's chosen the foolish things of this world to confound those that are wise in their own eyes.
Right.
I was reading.
So, do you want me to answer the question?
Yeah, what's the question? What's the question? The guy at the table who speaks the least.
Well, I have read over the last couple of years, I've read a lot about Benjamin Franklin. I've watched I think Ken Burns did a special on Benjamin Franklin, and I've watched a couple of other things, and this movie, The Great Awakening, it's about the relationship with
George. See it?
Oh yeah, George Whitefield and Benjamin Franklin, right?
Yeah.
But
an unlikely friendship.
Benjamin Franklin, of his time, was one of the most renowned celebrities in Europe as well as North America. I mean, he was a printer. He printed Poor Richard's Almanac, which he's known for his witticisms and his
amazing.
And of course, he's experimenting.
Early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. This is all Poor Richard's Almanac.
And he's a scientist that discovers that lightning is electricity. On his trips back and forth to Europe, he's
acquiring funds for us for the revolution from the French.
Right. And but even before the war, when he went to London and other places, on the trips, he's watching the currents and he's throwing peanut shells or something overboard and watching and measuring how fast they go from where he threw them to the end of the ship. He's trying to calculate what the currents are. and keeping a time as far as how much time they're taking to make the crossing. And just these little experiments. I mean, his mind was always active and observing things. Well, he was known at gatherings where people were sitting around and eating and talking that he was the man who pretty much said the least. He was the one, yeah, he was the one that often was the big listener.
I never heard that before.
Yeah, and so I read this and saw this. This is probably 5 or 6 years ago, and I realized I needed to become a good listener. And now that I'm in my friendship with you, I realize why God prepped me for
thanks
that.
a lot. I resemble that.
But being a listener has helped me in my relationship with my wife and my children, because I'm naturally have a gift of wanting to impart information to someone. And but
are you too quick maybe sometimes to let your wife finish a story?
well, I know
fix it?
I know what she's going to say, so I've
so the arrogance, right?
well, yeah, she's comes from a Japanese culture, growing up in Hawaii, so the manner in which she talks and that culture talks, she's not used to interruptions. And in my world,
you have one of those too.
in my world,
my
when you
word.
come to a conclusion of what's being said, let's get on with the conversation. So I've learned to not be that way and try to be a really good listener. And I think, Rhett, what we started off talking about is when people are noticing the God's creation, that's part of their process, and then they encounter us. And what are they going to get from us? Are they going to get someone that's actually listening to them? Because Peter says, be ready to give a defense when asked. Okay? And I think the most significant time that our words fall out on fertile ground is when somebody is asking us the question. So that plays out in my life with our cafe ministry. We just reopened our cafe in January in Utila, and we were there until like the middle of March, and the rest of the team came back last week.
Now, they were going to build a church down there years ago, but the Lord said, no, don't build a church. People are reticent to go through the doorway of a church, but they will come to a coffee shop where you can be there to minister kindness and love of Christ.
Right, and thank you for saying that. It's an island where many people come for scuba diving and free diving. We have, I've met people, literally, Rhett, I've met people from every European country on this island.
Is it a third world nation, would you say?
Well, Honduras is, but the Bay Islands used to be an English colony, and their level of life has always been somewhat of a step above.
Because of the organizational skills of the Brits.
And I just think the culture and being offshore from the rest of Honduras, and at least in the 80s and 90s, kept the Bay Islands free from a lot of the violence and drug trafficking that was going on. Is it humid? It's just like here. Same
just
climate.
Like Florida.
Same
so
climate.
Humid in the summer. Is there summertime the same time ours is?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're 15 degrees north latitude, so we're in the same season. You
built a coffee shop down there, and that helps support the missionary.
That was for me, okay. But
I mean, you didn't ring the bell for me.
People coming in to the cafe, we serve them hopefully a good cup of coffee. What we're drinking today, Rhett, is a coffee that we just got last week from Rwanda.
Rwanda. That's Africa, right?
Yeah, it's a delicious coffee. It's got a slight lemon note in it. It's got some black tea notes. It's got some brown sugar notes. It's a really...
Since you got into this coffee thing, would you say you cultivated a palate? Because I was just telling Barbara the other day, I said, at first these coffees are kind of like I'm used to, cheap, Dunkin' Donuts, or I don't like Starbucks coffee, but other places that serve coffee. And then all of a sudden I said, but I think I'm starting to cultivate a palate.
Well, it's a matter of, first of all, not putting any sugar or milk in the coffee, drinking it black. but then just letting, kind of slurping it a little bit and letting some of those molecules get up into your nasal passages where your taste buds are.
Like with wine, which you add water, where you add air to, they
Right.
aerate wine to bring out the flavor. So
Back to so serving coffee and serving good food
yeah,
and engaging people. People love to talk about themselves. And if you get their name,
no, I didn't know.
if you get,
Did I hear a grunt from the producer there? Uh-oh.
I'll tell you what, Rhett, this is coming round and round and round. And you
Your
asked the
day
question.
of humbling is upon you, my son.
Okay, but just the fact that we're listening and the fact that we get to know them by name and we get to know the drink that they like. And when people are traveling, they like to find out where you're from. I like to find out where they're from. It's amazing. I meet people, and in my life, just my dad being in the military, living in Germany and Turkey and North Carolina, Texas, and Ohio and Kentucky, and then in my own naval time in California, in Nevada, in Washington State, in Pensacola, Florida, being in the Philippines, being on aircraft carriers in the Indian Ocean. I've covered a lot of ground, and when I meet people, it's very uncanny that either I know somebody from there or I've been there myself or lived there. It's amazing,
Yeah,
you know.
connection.
So it's making a connection, and I think when you make a connection with people, Rhett, I think they get curious about who you are and why you're doing what you're doing. For me and my family, having gone to Honduras in November of '84 and working with the refugees, and then being asked to start some schools, and then starting a school project, primary and secondary education that lasted 37 years, and funding that and training teachers and building the buildings, and all with really no resources. It was really been a God thing. People often ask us, well, why are you guys doing that? And how are you doing it? And of course, we get a chance to tell them our story of a girl growing up in a Buddhist culture in Hawaii that first heard about Jesus when she was 15, and me going to my parents taking me to Sunday school, but it was the right thing to do in the 50s and 60s. But once I got out of high school, I never went back. And then my experience with God in '81 that caused me to become a follower of Jesus, these are all testimonies that we have, and these are the seeds that we get to throw out. And each of us that are followers of Jesus have a story. And my view, Rhett, is that everybody that I meet is on a spiritual line. I think I've mentioned this to you before. It's either -7 or +7. They're on this spiritual line. -7's a Satan worshiper. I've actually had coffee with people from San Francisco that I realized in the midst of the conversation, I think these guys are Satan worshipers. I could just sense
You
it.
also had a girlfriend before you knew the Lord
She was into
spoke with a
sorcery.
gruff voice, and it wasn't her voice.
She was into sorcery, and yeah, that was one of the turning points in my life. But everybody's on
It's
this
kind of
line.
freaky to have that happen before you're a Christian, you know?
So when I meet somebody,
Yeah.
I can discern where they're at on that line. And if, like yesterday, I had a conversation with two of my Swiss Air pilots. Remember, Rhett, they used to come for over 30 years. Swiss Air sent all their pilots to Vero Beach for training. They trained here at Flight Safety, and about 14 of those classes came when we opened the Rio Coco Cafe from 2011 till they finally finished in 2019.
But you have another school right next to you, too.
And right now there's another flight school. But I was talking to these Swiss guys yesterday. One's actually from Germany, the other's from Austria. And in just talking to them, I knew that they were from a Christian culture, but they weren't followers of Jesus. So I figured they were -2 or -3. And I asked them questions about, how do you guys feel about the immigration things going on, and are you seeing that in your communities? And so we talked a little bit about that. And One of my friends, Jacob, is from Austria, and I had just read earlier this week that 41% of the students in the Vienna public schools are Muslim. And I asked
40%.
41%. So
In
high
Germany.
percent. No, in Vienna,
Austria.
in Vienna, Austria.
Austria.
And so I asked him how he felt about this. And so we talked about that. And then I explained to him about the values of Islam are very different than the Judeo-Christian values. So we talked a little bit about that. And I tried to share my perspective historically of why Western culture took over the world is because in the Reformation in the 15 and 1600s, people started reading the Bible. They understood it to be the Word of God. They accepted the authority of the Bible, and they started implementing the practices prescribed in the Bible. And so suddenly we became good business people. We started universities. We started hospitals, we Christians. We understood that God had given us certain rights as humans that didn't derive from a king. And as our founders of our republic said, they come from God himself. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so we in Western culture developed medicine, we developed science, we developed education, we developed a system of economics that had a huge emphasis on benevolence. And when you read Adam Smith's Wealth of Nation, which really describes the capitalistic system, Adam said in the Wealth of Nations that if you're going to create wealth in the community, you better do it in a manner that is you're making the very best product at a very favorable price, that your employees love working for you because you're treating them so well, and your community loves having your business there because you're giving back to the community in charities and infrastructure and all of these things. And this is what the capitalistic system is supposed to be. Rhett, unfortunately, in our time, we have forgotten the benevolence aspect of capitalism, and we've become greedy and just taking money that should be distributed to employees and spread out in our communities. And we've built our second, third, and fourth homes and bought our yachts and paid ourselves exorbitant salaries. And that's why we have now in our culture a lot of people that are looking to socialism and communism as the solution to the problems of life.
Well, the knee-jerk reaction is to think everybody should share whether you're willing to work or not, but that is ungodly because in Thessalonians it says, if a man does not work, neither shall he eat. And one of the greatest things to learn, I was a hippy-dippy-doodle guy with my older brother. I'm 16 years of age. And, we're thinking we're going to take over the country and share everything. And, I was a member of Students for a Democratic Society. But there was this kid, a handsome young guy, about 18 years of age. He had one of those Camaros that was white and orange, a little sports car, muscle car. And it was the end of a day, I remember, and he walked by my window at the apartment complex that his family owned, which my brother and I rented an apartment at. My brother was 19 or 20 at the time. I was 16. And he had paint all over. He'd been out painting. He had a painter's outfit on. And he had paint all over him. And he always spoke with such confidence. And his walk had confidence. And I immediately knew that I no longer wanted to hang out with the hippies. I wanted to be like him. I wanted to work. I wanted to have that feeling because, the Bible says a man shall enjoy the fruit of his labor. We've all been through situations maybe where somebody needed to bestow a little money upon our person. And it's nice to receive a gift, but I've learned throughout life, it's much nicer to be the one giving the gift.
Of course.
But if you're sitting there on a Friday night and you're having a beautiful meal at a restaurant, to know you worked, a man shall enjoy the fruit of his labor. You shall work by the sweat of your brow. There's just something so satisfying. And what's the greatest thing that men like to do? We're hunters and gatherers. I go to the grocery store. And I noticed it took me years to be on up to this, even to myself. But you come home with the groceries, you feel like, hey, look what I got. I got the goods. I've been out in the wild
see,
world.
what you're describing is biblical culture, Rhett. This is all of these things are talked about in the Bible. You quoted the book of Thessalonians, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, and yes, there's a work ethic there. Colossians says, whatever you do, do unto the Lord, And as far as business, you know, in our coffee business, I'm trying to roast these coffee beans in the very best way to bring out the optimum flavor. And God tells me to do it like I'm going to serve Him. I brought you coffee today, Lord.
It is
to Rhett,
Don't call me Lord.
but I'm trying to,
Yes.
I'm doing it unto the Lord, And so,
What cup of coffee would you give? What kind of food? For instance, recently somebody gave us a gift. There is somebody who consistently, comes to your house, and everything has an outdated expiration date on it, and you always have to look at it because it could be years. Yesterday, I went to an event, Christian event, and the salad dressing tasted putrid. And I looked at it; it was a year and a half old, and says throw out after a couple of months.
see, this is the issue.
Yeah.
That sometimes that we don't really embrace this level of excellence that God calls us to do. And so what happened, I believe, when people started reading the Bible in the 14 and 15 and 1600s, remember, this movement was called the Reformation, and instead of following the traditions of the church, the cry was only Scripture, solo scriptura, only we follow the Bible. And the Bible gives us great guidance in how to run our business and how to run our society, great guidance in our family, husband, wife that love each other, and that, as the book of Proverbs 5, be exhilarated, be intoxicated in her love, let her breast satisfy you, Proverbs chapter 5. I love this passage because I'm supposed to look at my wife and just get intoxicated, meaning I act out of my norm when I'm around her because of the love and the allure that she has for me. And this is the model that the Bible gives me. So for family relationships, I'm to have that sort of intimacy and affection with my wife. And my children are told to obey me, and they don't necessarily have to agree with me, because young kids don't have all the understanding of why you shouldn't cross the road when traffic is coming, but obey. And this family unit has been the building block for human society, and there's no wonder that there's so much opposition to the traditional family unit now. But what I was trying to explain to my friends yesterday was that it was the Judeo-Christian worldview, the Bible, that caused Western culture to arrive at levels of excellence in all these areas, and we basically took over the world. And now we have other cultures like Islam that don't share these values. The way that women are treated, the lack of tolerance for any other thought other than what is written in the book and in their book. Just look at, for example, the Nobel Prize winners since Albert Nobel started his philanthropy. How many of them have come from the Islamic culture? And how many have come from the Judeo-Christian culture? I think there's only been 3 Muslims that have won Nobel Prizes.
And why do you think that is?
Because I think their worldview limits their exploration and limits their excellence, and their focus is on completely different things. So
they're never assured of salvation because they have to recklessly go through life scared, walking on eggshells, because they never know if they're actually going to make it or not.
Right.
And many religions require that you die for Allah, or you die for this one, you die for this. And Jesus is the only one that came and said, no.
I'm going to die for you.
Yes.
And that is
totally inverted.
That is the huge difference. So with my friends yesterday, I realized on that spiritual line that they're on, I figured they're a -2, maybe a -3, but I had some long conversation with them yesterday. I told them the story.
Some Muslims?
No, my Austrian and my German friend. That they fly for Swiss Airlines.
40% of the children in school are Muslims.
Yeah, Swiss Air. These are pilots for Swiss Air that trained in Vero Beach.
And what did they say?
Well, they hadn't thought about that. And because most people that grow up in Europe don't recognize that it's a Judeo-Christian worldview that made their culture the greatest in the world. They don't realize that. They don't
Principles of work and reward.
Of excellence in work, of treating your employees with fairness. I mean, you read the book of Colossians, and you see in chapter 3 some very specific instructions of masters, treat your employees or slaves, as he says. Now remember, in the Roman Empire, in some cities, 30 to 50% of the population were slaves, and they were very valued components of the society, held places of responsibility in businesses and in government. So treat your slaves with excellence.
Well, Hershey, Mr. Hershey from Hershey's Chocolates, this man was a great man. I mean, he built a little town with little houses for all his workers. He paid them well.
Right.
The man who started the Greek yogurt company up in upstate New York a few years ago, when he reached billionaire status, he brought all the employees in and said, "I'm giving each of you $400,000."
Well, Arthur Guinness was also another one. Started a brewery in Dublin in 1759.
He was a giver.
He was a Protestant that actually embraced the principles in the Bible.
Rockefeller was due for an early death, and he was on his deathbed, and he said, "I might as well start spending this money." And he started to give, and as he gave, he got healthy, lived to be in his 90s. And so he's the one that was giving out dimes on the street corner. Okay, yeah, he was a tough guy, but he made the money and then gave it back.
So,
not all of it, obviously.
Everyone is, to me, on this spiritual line.
Yeah.
And yesterday, in my conversation with my airline pilot friends who were trained here, I feel like I moved them. I feel like they got moved from a -3 to maybe a -2 or a -1.
Yeah, why?
Because they asked me. One of them said, Max said to me,
"Were they Muslims?"
No. They're just white
Swiss guys.
White Austrian. One's an Austrian, one's German.
Because there are a lot of people of color that are learning to be pilots.
Right. These are what I would call native-born Europeans.
Okay.
And they grow up in the culture. They're not quite sure what it is that has made their culture great because they're not walking with Jesus. Okay. They don't understand worldviews. They don't understand the value of a biblical worldview and how it in history, how it impacted society. So these are my friends. They stopped by to see me. We had some great conversations, and so we got to this point where I thought, I'm going to start asking them questions and listen. And so I asked them what they thought about the war in Iran, and they were just clueless actually to the threat of nuclear weapons, because they were talking about all the other things. And I said, well, how do you feel about Iran having a nuclear weapon? And they said, well, never really thought about that much. I said, well, what did you think when they fired those missiles at Diego Garcia and they went double the distance of what anybody thought their missiles would go? And now they have missiles that can reach Europe. What do you think of? I started to think about that. I said, well, one of my jobs in the Navy, I was a nuclear weapons delivery pilot. The aircraft that I flew, the A-6 Intruder.
Wow.
We delivered 3 different nuclear weapons. We practiced with them, and I'm fully aware of what they can do. So the idea that a apocalyptic Muslim regime in Iran, whose goal is to bring about chaos so that I think they call him the 13th prophet, can come in and take over the world, and their job is to create the chaos where he will come. These guys are true believers, and the moment they get a nuclear weapon, they're probably going to fire it at Tel Aviv on the first target, and then who knows what they're going to do with that. So
Hitler said what he was going to do. The Muslims have said what they're going to do. And believe them.
So I asked them about this and what they thought about it, and they hadn't really thought that one through. Then, as we continued talking, and this was a conversation went on for almost an hour, Max said, well, I just hope that when I'm your age, I can be sitting there with a family around me and just a successful life. And I said, you know what my key to a successful life is? And they said, what? I said, I'm a follower of Jesus. And that gave me an opportunity, after listening to them and asking them questions. Finally, we came to a point where the ground was very fertile. Mm-hmm. And Max was, in fact, asking me to give him an account of my testimony, as 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15. When asked, be ready to give an account.
So what did you say?
I said, well, let me tell you how it happened to me. And I told him the story of going to Maui in 1981 to help a friend open an ice cream business. I told him about my cousins who were marijuana farmers and lived on the island for 12 years who had become Christians and since I had seen him last a few years before. I told him about my sorcerer girlfriend who was from Honolulu.
I'm surprised you share that with people because
And
I believe it because I've seen things from the other side.
Well, it's a story that would change my life, and I figure God gave me the story for a reason, so I should share it.
Well, because a lot of people are stuck in that. Can you give a short rendition of that again, just for because somebody's listening right now?
Well, yeah. When I went to Maui in 1981, I was a skier. Yeah. I went to Vail, Colorado to ski. I worked in a hotel at night, and I was a banquet waiter. Then they made me restaurant manager, and then soon I was managing the bar, the disco. And
when I went to Maui, I was waiting for snow.
But my friend Bob went to Maui, opened an ice cream business, coerced me to come and help him in the off season in September when nothing was going on in Vail.
Yeah.
My girlfriend, who was from Honolulu, I met her. She was on our ski team at our hotel. She was a beautiful girl, very bubbly personality, great skier. But she could read your palm, and she chanted a lot. And when I asked her, she told me she was a warlock. And I said, "What's a warlock?" She said, "Well, it's like a good witch." So she's into sorcery. But at the time,
you didn't know anything about it.
I knew a little bit about it, but it was not that troubling to me. When I got to Maui, my cousins invited me to come to their church, and that's when I heard the pastor, Craig Englert, who became one of my dearest friends in life, say that the most important thing in this life that you can have is a personal relationship with Jesus. Well, I'd never heard that before, but I started thinking about that. Personal relationship, because I thought Christianity was all about the rules. Then Bonnie came over to help us with the ice cream store one Saturday, and she flew over from Honolulu, and then afterwards went to my apartment, and I asked her where her spiritual power came from, because I'd been thinking about these things. And she said, well, the Spirit gives it to me. And I said, well, is it a good spirit or is it a bad spirit? She says, well, I don't know, but he gives me power. And I thought, well, if it's an evil spirit, Bonnie, you need to let it go. And she said, no, he gives me power. And I said, no, Bonnie, you need to let that go. And she said, no. And I said, I got very forceful. Bonnie, if it's an evil spirit, you need to let it go. Well, when I said that the third time, suddenly she sort of kind of sat up. Her gaze shifted to over my head. She wasn't looking at me. She was kind of staring past me. And then a voice came out of her without her moving her lips or her jaw. And this voice came out and said, I will never leave this body. And I looked at her and she's sitting like a statue, not moving. And I said, what? And this voice said, I have become very accustomed to this body. And I thought, wow, I have seen this somewhere before. Oh, yeah, the movie The Exorcist. Oh, yeah, yes, this is where I've seen this. The priest, what did he do? He used the name of Jesus. So I said, you spirit in the name of Jesus, leave her. And suddenly this voice came and she jumped and this voice came out of her and said, no. But she's still gazing off in the distance and she's not moving her lips or her jaw. And I said to her a second, in the name of Jesus, you spirit, be gone. I said it to her a third time. Finally, she looked at me with consciousness, and I said, Bonnie, why did you say those things to me? She said, what did I say? I said, you said this, then you yelled at me. She didn't remember. That doesn't bother you, Bonnie? No. Well, it bothered me. And that night I'm laying in bed, and of course I'm kind of I slid over to there's a lot of distance between us. I realized I had seen in the spiritual world, and I'd seen good and I'd seen evil. And I'd seen that spirit jump when I used the name of Jesus. So that was my starting point to really discover if Jesus was who he said he was, or was he a lunatic that was delusional, or was he a deceiver that was lying to me? And when it comes
there
down,
was no in between. Was he a prophet? No, he wasn't a prophet because he said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. So either he's a liar or he's the truth. There ain't no in between.
Right. So I believe that all people that we meet are on the spiritual line. And I believe my friends yesterday, after I told them the story and the sincerity of my words and the aloha that we were feeling with one another and a lot of camaraderie, I believe they got nudged to a -1.
Now, these are the Muslims, or no, the Swiss people you were talking to yesterday who go to a flight school here in Vero Beach,
They are
Florida.
pilots.
Young pilots.
They were here in 2019 and going to flight school. They've been flying for Swiss Air for the last 5 years. They had one of them had a flight to Tampa, and they had a layover, so they drove over just to see me.
You're kidding?
Yeah,
That's a 3-hour just to see you. A 3-hour
They
drive.
came to Vero Beach. They hoped to see us at the cafe, and they walked in, and I saw these guys, Jacob and Max, and I went, I know you guys. They go, yeah, we were here in 2019. I go, oh yeah, tell me your names again. Yeah, Jacob, Max, okay. Very delightful guys. Very, it was so good to see.
They drove all that way to see you.
Well, they came to Vero Beach. They lived here for 4 months.
What do you call it, an alma mater? What do they call it where you study school? I don't know what the term is.
Yeah, but this Vero Beach has been a special place for the Swiss Air company because for 34, 35 years they trained all their pilots here, and so something they all have in common. But I'm hoping that now there will be other people that will follow up and play their part in Max and Jacob's lives and really encourage them that God is real and that he desires to have a relationship with. This is what happened to me. It's what happened to you. God is constantly tapping us on the shoulder. He's asking us, just turn around and look at me. Look at what I've created for you. Look what I've done for you.
But I remember thinking that Jesus freaks were nuts. And I remember thinking Jesus was foolishness. Oh, who's going to send his son? I wanted to believe in all this ethereal stuff and astral projection. From the age of 14, I read Autobiography of a Yogi, and I was into Eastern religions, got inducted into meditation up in Boston, all that stuff. But none of it rang true. But it wouldn't be till I was 29 that I actually had my encounter with the Lord.
Right, and Christianity is the true revolutionary manner of living in this world. It's so counterculture, it's counterintuitive, it's serving others rather than serving yourself, and it's recognizing what Jesus himself did for us. I mean, the book of Colossians, which I've been reading a lot these last couple of weeks, it describes Jesus as the creator, the one that holds things together. He's the exact image. He's the icon of God. The icon, Plato says, when you look at a sun setting over the water, that reflection in the water is the icon of the sun. It's the exact image. Paul's describing this. This is the creator. This is God himself in a human body. The next description, he's the prototokos, which is translated firstborn in our English Bibles. It's a legal term referring to the rights of the firstborn son who could own property. All of his father's rights and property were his, and he could do with them what he wants. So the Bible's trying to tell us that Jesus is the exact image of Yahweh. He's the creator, and in a human form, he is has all the rights and privileges and prerogatives of the creator. So it's such a meditating moment to think that this guy came, and rather than be a king that forced us to obey him, he paid the price for our separation so that we would understand his love for us and be compelled to follow him and compelled to obey him and compelled to live our lives for other people. And as you've discovered, Rhett, and I have, this is where true life actually exists, is in this realm of being about God's business, serving the King, and taking care of the people around us.
Well, you know what scripture I heard from my friend Bobby Vendetta before I knew Jesus? He had become born again Christian. He said, well, Jesus said, I wish above all things that thou were either hot or cold, because if ye are lukewarm, I will spew thee out of my mouth. And I don't know why that particular one, but it went through my head and it wouldn't go away. Either you're hot or cold. What
do you think Jesus was saying as he's speaking this? Remember, the context is the book of Revelation, chapter 3. And Jesus is speaking to the different churches in that area.
There's no middle ground.
And well, okay, let's look at the context for just a moment, okay? Laodicea is in the middle of a valley, a very rich valley in the Lycus and Meander River in southwestern Turkey.
Yeah.
And at the north end of this valley is a hot springs, Hierapolis, which for thousands of years people come to this hot springs for healing. I was there in 2021. People are coming and sitting in the hot springs. I sat in the springs, okay? They come for healing. It's also a place in Turkey where they have hot air ballooning. And so we went for a balloon ride. Right in the middle of the valley is Laodicea, which has been excavated, and a lot of the ruins have been rebuilt. But to the south end of the valley, right at the base of a 5,200-foot Mount Cadmus, which has snow on it, is a spring or a river that comes out of the base of that mountain and is ice-cold water that's very refreshing. Okay, you and I are living in Laodicea. The water in Laodicea has a little bit of magnesium and calcium in it from this, I think, hot springs. It's like 4 miles away. And the people in Laodicea were always having problems with their stomachs because the water they were drinking was upsetting. Now, let's put ourselves in the room, in the context. I wish that you were either hot or cold. Mm-hmm. If I live in Laodicea, I know that hot is referring to Hierapolis, where the springs are healing. Cold is referring to Colossae, where the water is very refreshing. Because you're neither healing or refreshing, I'm going to vomit you out of my mouth. Okay?
He used it as a lesson.
As a lesson for the people of Laodicea, because as he says in Revelation chapter 3, you're a proud people. And the reality is, in 44, there was an earthquake and Laodicea was destroyed. And the Roman emperor offered them financial aid to rebuild. But the people of Laodicea, you know what they said to the emperor? We don't need your stinking money. We have enough of our own. We don't need any help. And this was a proud people, but there was a congregation of Christians there. There was a congregation in Hierapolis as well as Colossae. So you read the book of Colossians, you see these communities mentioned, and Paul says, make sure you read this letter to them, and I'm sending a letter to Laodicea. Make sure you guys read that one, all right? So in the context, and Rhett, we talked about geographical factors. This is a geographical factor that helps me understand that Jesus is telling me, in your interaction with other people, either be refreshing or be healing. But because you're neither, your words are going to fall on the ground and people are going to think nothing of what you just said. And for Jesus, he wants us to be healing and refreshing to the people around us. If we're not, he's going to vomit us out of his mouth. Now, back in my Navy days, we were in San Diego doing our workups for a deployment on the Kitty Hawk. My friends and I jumped in the car when we came ashore on Saturday. We went to the beach. We met our guy that sold us a bag of weed. We smoked up a little bit. We went to a Mexican restaurant. We ate lots of tacos and drank lots of tequila. We went to San Diego State to watch the Jimmy Buffett concert that night. And about midnight, we're driving back to Coronado. And I'm driving, and Dong Barry is sitting beside me, and right behind me is Killer Whale. That was his call sign, Killer, Dan Whale. And Tank Tingler was sitting next to him. And as we're driving, I hear this voice say, "Pull over." And I said, "What'd you say?" "Pull over." I said, "Okay, I'm okay." And so I started making my way over to the 5 lanes to get over to the right lane, and "Pull over now." I said, "Okay." And suddenly the cabin of that car erupted with noise, and I hear this gurgling sound, and I see this splatter hit the windshield in front of me. except for a clear spot that matches the outline of my head. At the same time, I feel something warm hit the back of my ears and the back of my neck, and a pungent odor fills the cabin.
Why are you telling this story?
I turned around, I said, "Killer, I'm pulling over." And he jumped out of the car, and the rest of those tacos were on the side of the road. Jesus said, "I will vomit you out of my mouth."
We didn't need that story
If
for that.
you are neither refreshing or healing to the people I place around you.
Yeah.
This is a vivid lesson in us being effective with what you started this conversation with, is us being effective and being listeners and being salt and light to the people around us.
All right, we're going to take a break and do another show. If you're listening, viewing us on Facebook or wherever, stay tuned. Don't tune all. We'll keep the thing going here. We're going to take a break, a potty break, and then we'll be back to do another hour. And what's our subject going to be when we get back?
Well, it's going to be that words
matter.
Yes,
Okay.
words matter.
I'm Rhett Palmer, and of course we're talking with the biblical historian Michael Bagby, who's a missionary, full-time missionary. I was a part-time missionary, and we live in Vero Beach, Florida, and we'll be back.